Phoenix Games, a company so notorious for bad games that I don't even know where to start in describing them to you. We've looked at some of their games on the channel, and this week they are back, and this is certainly one of the racing games of all time, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Worst Racing Games, the internet series where you guys suggest different racing games that you think are terrible, then I play them, review them, and rank them. Last week we had the surprisingly decent car racing challenge, even if it actually had nothing to do with racing, and this week the wheel has given us White Van Racer. Oh man, we're in for a treat today. Released in February 2007 on the PS2, yes that's 2007 on the PS2, bearing in mind we had moved on to the next generation of consoles by this point, and they'd been going for a while. And anyway, there'd been much better games on the PS2 many years before this, such as the obvious choices like GT4 and Burnout 3. Basically, this game feels like it belongs to an entirely different era, not just in terms of quality, but definitely in terms of ambition, or lack thereof. And here's the kicker, it actually released on the same day as Okami in Europe. Yes, that Okami, the beautifully stylized, critically acclaimed gaming masterpiece. Meanwhile, somewhere else on the shelf, probably covered in dust and most likely confusion, sat White Van Racer. I think it's safe to say that most people made the correct choice. Except me, apparently. So anyway, today we are looking at one of the most bizarre, low effort, and oddly kind of fascinating racing games that I've played on the PS2. So this game was developed by Tuner Technologies, a name that doesn't exactly inspire confidence. And once you see their portfolio, things definitely do not improve. Other titles from Tuner Technologies include Cow Hunter and Turbo Trucks. And yes, I did say Cow Hunter. A game about shooting flying cows. That alone should tell you everything you need to know about the level of prestige that we're dealing with here today. Publishing duties were of course handled by Phoenix Games, a company that should need no introduction, but just for the lowdown, they are very infamous for churning out low-budget titles across Europe. If you've ever browsed a bargain bin in the mid-2000s, you have probably seen their work. Or if you've seen more than just one or two episodes of this series, you've probably also seen their work. Games with generic covers, questionable gameplay, and a strong sense that they were made very quickly and very cheaply. And White Van Racer could just be their magnum opus. Now before we sink our teeth into White Van Racer, if you're new around here and you love racing games, some terrible racing games, and maybe some you've never heard of, please consider hitting that subscribe button and tapping the bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. And whilst you're at it, if you want to support the series or channel any further and want to get your hands on some cool goodies, such as early access to videos and names and credits of uploads, then check out my Patreon using the link in the description below. Anyway, that's enough selling myself to you, let's talk about the concept of this game. Because before we even get into the gameplay, we have to just talk about the actual concept that they've described it as. The official premise reads like something someone came up with as a joke, and then it just got accidentally greenlit. Now it's your turn to be the infamous White Van Man, instead of just being an innocent road user on the receiving end of their crazy driving. White Van Racer puts you in the driving seat for some seriously madcap racing, road hogging, pushing and shoving through rolling countryside, country lanes, and mountain roads. From ice cream and burger vans to plumbers and window cleaners. Choose your vehicle and take on some truly insane opponents in tournaments, time trials, and quick races. Progress through tournaments to unlock more tracks and vans, and ultimately become the most feared and revered white van driver of them all. So yeah, I'm not gonna lie guys, this game is crazy as f***. It's ridiculous, it's absolutely absurd, and honestly it could have actually been funny if it leaned into that chaos. But unfortunately the game takes this concept and does literally nothing interesting with it whatsoever. So booting up the game, you are greeted with a menu that perfectly sets the tone for everything that follows. The background features just one image of a white van, not a particularly detailed one, not a stylish one, just a white van. It looks low res, poorly rendered, and about as exciting as you would expect. Overlaying this is a painfully basic menu with just a few options: new game, options, and records. That's it. No flair, no animation, no music that grabs your attention, just a static, lifeless screen that feels like it was thrown together in an afternoon as a concept for a PowerPoint. And if you are hoping things would improve from here, well, of course, what series are you watching, guys? Prepare to be disappointed. So, as the wonderful description of this game points out, White Van Racer offers 3 primary modes. You have Tournament Mode, which is the main mode of the game, featuring 3 difficulty levels. You've got Amateur, Semi-Pro, and Pro. Each difficulty consists of 4 races, that's 12 races across the entire mode. It's as standard as it gets. No twists, no progression systems really worth mentioning, no meaningful rewards beyond unlocking like 1 extra van and 1 extra track. Alright, maybe 2 vans and tracks, but just don't get your expectations too high. Anyway, there's Time Trial, which is exactly what you'd expect. Pick a track, set a time, try to beat it. There's nothing inherently wrong with it just doesn't add anything exciting because the game itself just isn't very fun. And then there's Quick Race, which lets you jump into a race on any track with up to a few different opponents. Not exactly a busting competition, but it does the job. Overall, the game modes feel like a checklist rather than a designed experience. Everything is present in the most basic form possible, with little to no effort made to elevate or differentiate them. Now, one of the few things the game technically does well is offering a variety of vans. There's a couple of generic white ones, but then you've got some more unique options like the burger van, the ice cream van, which was my favourite but also was kind of questionable and took up way too much of the screen, the plumber's van, a window cleaner's van, and the last van you unlock in the game of White Van Racer is a black van, so that's exciting, I guess. It sounds amusing on paper, but the execution just completely kills any potential charm. Every single vehicle looks, how do I word this? Awful. The models are blocky, the textures are low quality, and there's very little visual distinction beyond basic colours and decals. Worse still, the difference between vans don't feel meaningful in gameplay. They don't handle in interesting ways, they don't really offer unique advantages except the smaller ones take up less of the screen so you can see more. They're just slightly different flavours of the same bad experience. Damn, this video has been going for quite a while and I haven't even got to the gameplay yet, so let's actually talk about that. Because this is where White Van Racer does truly earn its reputation. Driving in this game, it feels, well, wrong. There's no other way I can really put it. The handling is incredibly floaty, as if your van is gliding over the road rather than actually gripping it. Turning feels sluggish and unresponsive, and braking lacks any sense of weight or control. It's the kind of driving model that makes you question whether or not your inputs are actually being registered whilst you're playing. And then there's the camera. You get exactly 1 camera angle, that's it, no customization, no alternatives, no adjustments, you can't even look behind you. This becomes a huge problem, as I mentioned, when using larger vans, as they take up more screen space and limit your visibility, especially when you're trying to dodge the very annoying AI. Instead of adapting the camera to suit the vehicle, the game just kinda leaves you to deal with it. The result is a frustrating, claustrophobic experience that actively works against you the entire game. Now, if you were hoping the AI opponents might add some excitement to this game, well, I'm sorry to crush your dreams, but you're gonna have to think again. They are, quite frankly, some of the worst AI you will encounter in any racing game. For the most part, they follow predictable, often nonsensical patterns, and then every now and then they just decide that they want to crash into you or other racers. But it doesn't feel like they're trying to do what the game says, where they push and shove you on the track. They just deadass crash. It's so annoying. They struggle with basic navigation, and they rarely provide any meaningful challenge once you get around the first 1 or 2 corners. Instead of feeling like you're competing against other drivers, it kind of feels like you're sharing the road with a malfunctioning robot. There's no tension, no rivalry, no sense of accomplishment when you win, just more a sense of relief that the race is at least finally over. Now again, to the game's credit, it does feature quite a large handful of tracks, but really, they all fall into two categories: countryside and snowy countryside. And that's it. Once you've raced on one track from each category, you have seen literally everything the game has to offer. There's very little variation in layout, scenery, or even design. The environments feel repetitive and very uninspired, with long stretches of bland roads and minimal visual interest. It's the kind of design that makes every race blur together into one forgettable experience. And for a game released in 2007, White Van Racer looks incredibly, painfully outdated. The textures are muddy, they're low res, the environments lack detail or any depth, and the vehicles, which is, arguably the most important visual element in a racing game, look just rubbish, awful, terrible. Even compared to earlier PS2 titles, this game struggles to hold its own. It feels less like a late generation release, and more like something that got lost in development for several years on PS1, before finally being pushed out the door on the PS2. And then if the visuals don't wear you down, the audio certainly will. The entire game basically features one song. Just one song to rule them all, basically. It plays over and over again, looping endlessly as you navigate races and menus through the same tracks, and it's not a good song. It's very generic, it's repetitive, and it very quickly becomes grating. And the engine sounds are equally uninspired. Everything about the audio feels like it was pulled from a stock library and dropped into the game with very minimal effort. One of the most baffling aspects of this game is how little content it actually has. You can unlock everything in literally 1 hour. Not because it's challenging or rewarding, but because there's simply not much to unlock. This is largely due to the game being printed on a CD rather than a DVD, which limits its storage capacity. But even within those constraints, the lack of creativity and effort is very glaring. It feels less like a complete game and more like a prototype that somehow made it to store shelves. And this is the PS2 version. The PC version was somehow worse. For a 2007 PC game, there were no graphical options, no resolution settings, just no video customization at all. And as I say, PC game, 2007, completely unacceptable. It's as if the port was done with the absolute minimum effort required to make it functional and nothing more. Now, in terms of critical response, it was very hard to find any reviews for this game. In fact, trying to find a review of White Van Racer is like trying to find a BMW driver who knows how to use his indicators. There are virtually no reviews. One user review on Moby Games gave it a 1 out of 5, and honestly, that might be generous. The lack of coverage really speaks volumes. This is a game that flew under the radar not because it was overlooked, but because it simply was not worth noticing. And on top of that, of course, there were no sales figures either, and let's be honest, we can make an educated guess, it didn't sell well. This is the kind of game that might have picked up a few sales from unsuspecting parents or bargain hunters, but it was never ever going to achieve any level of commercial success. So now the time has come to rank White Van Racer on our worst racing games tier list. This game honestly has quite a unique concept, and some of the vans, although incredibly ugly, are very funny. This is certainly one of the more interesting games released under the Phoenix Games publisher. But that doesn't mean it's good, by any stretch of the imagination. So for me, I think this game is actually going to be a rare entry into the so bad it's good category. Because I feel like you have to experience this once in your life. Just do one race in any van. Maybe as a torture method, maybe as a curiosity, who knows, up to you. Because to me this isn't just a bad game, it's a really fascinating one. The concept of turning aggressive white van drivers into a low budget video game is just inherently very funny and very intriguing. But it's also a reminder of how far the industry has come since and how strange things used to be. There's something oddly compelling about video games like this. not because they're enjoyable, but because they offer a glimpse of games into the fringes of game development. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our look at White Van Racer, and with it this week's episode of Worst Racing Games. So let me know in the comments down below, have you played this game? Are you going to go and check it out now? Fair play if you are. Let me know what you think of it, and if you'd rank it any differently, and as always, if you have any suggestions for the wheel, pop those down there as well. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications to stay up to date with my future uploads. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thank you and goodbye.